By 2021, most of the world's population is living in metropolitan areas. Therefore, it's become more important than ever for global governments to discover ways to make their cities more active, democratic, and sustainable. In this video documentary, we'll first take a look at an introduction to SDG 11.3, then we'll be taking a look at the problems and the current solutions. That is, what are the core issues that make the target a problem and what is already being done. Thirdly, we will take a deeper look into a specific real-life initiative. And last but not least, we'll be telling you what still needs to be done to achieve SDG 11.3 and how you and those around you can help create more sustainable cities. Firstly, let's introduce SDG 11.3. My name is Kevin Han, we have David Bard here today, and we'll be explaining what sustainable cities are and how governments can currently design them. In order to understand that, let's first take a deeper look at SDG 11.3. This goal is defined as, by 2030, enhance inclusive and sustainable urbanization and capacity for participatory, integrated, and sustainable human settlement planning and management in all countries. In order to understand this goal, we have to break it down. We'll be taking a deeper look at all of these highlighted terms that are vital to this definition. Firstly, sustainable urbanization. Sustainable urbanism is both the study of cities and the practices to build them, that focus on promoting their long-term viability by reducing consumption, waste, and harmful impacts on people and place while enhancing the overall being of both people, place, and the environment. Meanwhile, participatory human settlement is an approach to designing active, livable cities, which make urban planning accessible, community-driven, and fun. It is grounded in the belief that blending local knowledge and expert knowledge leads to strong outcomes when designing cities. Integrated human settlement planning puts a focus on reducing inequalities between different types of housing, increasing community facilities, and integrating housing into natural greenery. Finally, sustainable human settlement means that within the context of human settlement, sustainability accordingly refers to those settlements that are capable of remaining in existence using resources, whether natural, financial, or human, as efficiently as possible. So then, what are the smaller indicators under SDG 11.3? SDG 11.3.1 states that the ratio of land consumption rate to population growth rate is an indicator to solving this goal. So we have to meet a ratio of land consumption that is ideal. SDG 11.3.2 states that the proportion of cities with a direct participation structure of civil society in urban planning and management that operate regularly and democratically is also important. So we must create regulated and democratic cities where people are able to have a voice. If we can achieve these things, we can achieve SDG 11.3.
Addressing the problems and solutions that cities and communities face today. So first you can see a nice little diagram addressing the need for SDG 11.3 with some of the largest issues that are addressed, including urban sprawl, high density population, lack of integrated community design, and a need for democratic participatory planning. So a general overview of 11.3.1, there are two general issues: low population growth with high land consumption, and high population growth with low land consumption, commonly referred to as urban sprawl and overpopulation, and I'll go more into these in a second. So first let's address the first one, urban sprawl. So this is a nice definition for urban sprawl that explains that urban sprawl is when a lot of land is used inefficiently, where a lot of people spread out over a large amount of land, which can have a lot of harmful impacts. So let me give you a few examples of what urban sprawl might look like. It includes a high dependency on automotive travel, so this means driving a lot, large distances, very spread out neighborhoods, so less like townhouses and apartments and more single houses, detached houses that are spread throughout a large residential neighborhood. Poor planned integration between housing facilities and community, between housing and community facilities. So this means things like community centers and other public services are hard to access. So here's just a picture of urban sprawl. And why is urban sprawl harmful? Well, urban sprawl is harmful for a number of reasons, but the large reasons include the encroachment on the environment, so the destruction of things like woodland and farmland. Urban sprawl encourages citizens to move to the suburbs, so that means that there's going to be a lot of driving, which means a lot of emissions, and it's just generally not good for human health. Urban sprawl also focuses on low-density housing that does not foster a sense of community and leads to wasted space, so people feel less like there's a sense of community because they're so spread apart. So, how does urban sprawl contribute to inequality? Because it does. A lack of public spaces often leads to privatization, so services becoming private, which often leads to segregation and inequality. Public spaces are integral to the success of a city and community, and without them, and with them being privatized instead of public things, it can really be to the detriment of the community. And this detriment may or may not undo societal progress in urban areas. So the government's been working hard to make things more public. There's things like public healthcare and public resources, but with privatization, this is kind of unraveled. So Toronto's actually a pretty good example of urban sprawl. Toronto has a lot of large neighborhoods and large suburbs that are spread across a wide region. Me, myself, I live in Vaughan, so I have to travel a long time to school. So that's a direct example of urban sprawl. And here's just a map of urban sprawl. So now I'd like to address high-density population. So essentially what high-density population is when a lot of people live in really tight quarters. And while at first this might not sound like a really bad thing, it is for a number of reasons, because it can cause overpopulation, which leads to less affordable housing and less convenient jobs. And here's just a picture of overpopulation. So, while issues related to low population density areas often occur in generally wealthier regions because of the resources and money to spread out, high population density often occurs in poor areas, leading to things like slums and homelessness, which are actually addressed by other SDGs. So this can include after effects like employment issues and housing troubles.
The third problem under SDG 11.3 is the lack of integrated community designs. A lack of housing that is integrated into the larger community and the environment decreases the living standards of average residents. Community integrated designs refers to, first of all, community greenery, such as parks, trails, and wildlife reserves. Second of all, community facilities, such as recreation centers, amusement parks, restaurants, markets, and religious facilities like churches and mosques. Finally, they refer to socially designed homes, such as apartments and public spaces and open concept offices and homes. There are numerous harms of not having integrated designs. Firstly, there's a lack of community and a lack of identity for those communities. Secondly, there is increased division between different residents. For example, some residences might be more affordable and more comfortable than others, increasing the social wealth gap. Thirdly, there is less public facilities, such as parks and pools, for residents to enjoy, as there is less integration between the major community as a whole. Finally, the fourth problem under SDG 11.3 is the need for democratic planning. This is perhaps the most important problem. To understand how communities can improve their design, it is important to listen to the residents. Democratic planning is key to successful communities. At the root of a democratic society, democratic planning can be seen, ensuring that decisions are approved by the wider community and new objectives have the benefit of the community in mind. A democratic vote is very important when making large-scale decisions for a community, such as increasing or decreasing funding, such as building a new public facility, such as a public library. It is important that people are able to have a say in these decisions because only residents know what they need. So then, where are we now? As of now, only 47% of the global population lives within 400 meters walking distance to open public spaces. Moreover, only around half of the world's population has convenient access to public transport. Finally, since 2007, around half of the world's population lives in urban regions, and this number is projected to increase to 60% by 2030. These large cities that people live in often lack proper infrastructure, including waste disposal, clean air, and accessible public transportation. Finally, there are many COVID-19 implications, making the problems that I have just described much worse for specific communities of people. While the coronavirus has shut down large cities, they still continue to be epicenters for virus transmission and spread easier in cities than less populated areas. Cities without proper infrastructure to combat this are the most vulnerable. The already fragile infrastructure that exists there have the chance of being decimated by the closures, which may have effects from the city-wide level all the way to impacting individuals directly. Slums are one of the regions hit the hardest by the closures due to their poor infrastructure, lack of adequate sanitation, and close quarters. So then, what is being done to combat all of this? Many architects are currently adding plant life on terraces and walls to increase the supply of fresh oxygen to building residents. For example, Singapore's Changi Airport has created an indoor rainforest to attract visitors. Moreover, many residents are also encouraged to grow their own plants on their balconies, allowing the community to integrate into the local environment. Wildlife also thrives, and there is plenty of natural habitats and fresh vegetation. This is an example of a green office building. Governments around the world have also increased their investment in community facilities, such as condominium lounges, pools, and public libraries. This decreases wealth inequality as people from all walks of life are able to interact with each other. Moreover, this also gives local communities an identity. Some of these facilities include public parks, which allow the community to be more sustainable from an environmental perspective as people are spending more time in nature. This is an example of a free public library in an American city. Thirdly, let's take a look at a real-life initiative that has been completed to achieve SDG 11.3. This is Habitat 67 from the ground floor. Habitat 67 was the 1967 debut project of Israeli, Canadian, and American architect Moshe Safdie. It was made with the intent to integrate housing with the environment and put an emphasis on community spaces. At Habitat 67, there are 354 identical in size rooms, 146 residences, and dozens of community rooms. Habitat 67 has been globally acclaimed for its community-minded and open concept design, as well as its ability to utilize terraces and green spaces to first of all be more sustainable, and second of all integrate itself into the environment. Moshe Safdie went on to pursue several mega projects in Singapore after making his debut, Habitat 67, in Montreal's Expo 67.
So now I'd like to address what needs to be done to help solve this problem. So where are we now? It's quite difficult to track where we are now, as a lot of these targets are kind of hard to follow objectively with statistics. However, a few statistics include that as of 2017, 74% of the population have access to waste collection services, and as of 2009, 33% of the world's population lives in slums. So what can you do to help out these issues? So number one, raise awareness. Raising awareness is one of the best ways to make people know about the issue, so they're more likely to contribute and help. Two, get involved. There are a bunch of ways to get involved. However, some include going to an overseas community service program to help in developing countries to help build their communities and to help with infrastructure. So you can access sites like the following ones to help in finding community service trips. And three, donate. There are many charities that offer ways to help to SDG 11, and those include CanadaHelps.org, Green Infrastructure Foundation, and more. Even the Government of Canada helps fund international infrastructure development projects, so you can go check those things out to see how you can get involved in terms of donation.